Hello, and welcome to my first official video. Since the slogan of my channel is Pseudoscience Kills, I figured I'd make this first video explaining what a pseudoscience is and how to identify it. Before I begin, I want to urge you to take in this information and to really examine practices in your own life through an unbiased lens. While some pseudoscientific beliefs can be written off as entertainment or generally unharmful, this is certainly not true for all of them. Pseudoscience can hurt the ability of science to help the world by spreading misinformation and fear of true science. Pseudoscientific belief and practice can be an unnecessary waste of money and a gateway to harmful schools of thought. Some types of pseudoscience and anti-science beliefs, such as the anti-vaccination movement and alternative medicine, can and have led to serious health complications and unnecessary death by convincing people to forego critical medical treatments. With that being said, I'm the Woo Fighter. Let's get into it. Now, pseudoscience is a broad term used to describe a belief or practice which masks itself as science, but fails to adhere to the practices of true science. Supporters of pseudoscience frequently use scientific terminology in an effort to make their claims seem more valid. They will present their claims as both scientific and valid, yet fail to adhere to the scientific method, develop double-blind experiments, or present any type of falsifiable prediction. As a matter of fact, most pseudosciences rely heavily on unfalsifiable claims, expert testimony, or simply self-verification, meaning that other books or claims made by other people prove it, therefore it must be true. In future videos, I will further explore flawed and weak argument types and how to spot them, as well as important terms such as the scientific method, double-blind experimentation, and falsifiability. For now, we're just going to focus strongly on identifying a pseudoscience. I have this topic broken down into what I believe are 5 main identifying factors. I'm going to list these factors and then further delve into each one and all the different ways that it can apply. The following are some of the key identifying factors of a pseudoscience. 1. Use of vague and/or exaggerated claims. 2. Overreliance on confirmation rather than refutation. 3. Absence of progress and stasis of the idea. 4. Claims of a vast conspiracy. 5. Misuse and misrepresentation of scientific terms. 1. Use of vague and/or exaggerated claims. Promoters of pseudoscience love to use vague terms, and they'll almost never offer any type of specific measurement. An example of this is claiming that a treatment or object can rid the body of toxins without ever clearly defining what a toxin is, or how you can even tell that it's been removed. As mentioned earlier, most of these sciences often lack proper experimentation, failing to adhere to standards such as a control group, a placebo group, or a double-blind experiment. They will fail to use the principle of parsimony, also called Occam's razor. This principle can basically be stated as saying that the simplest solution is most likely the right one. Pseudoscience promoters will often fail to seek an explanation that requires the fewest additional assumptions. A good example of a pseudoscience that relies heavily on broad and vague claims is astrology. Through broad claims and clever wording, astrology is often able to make predictions based off a person's birth sign that can be wildly inaccurate, yet still feel true to the person. Let's say I were to walk up to you and introduce myself as an astrologer. You then tell me that you're a Pisces and you ask me to give you a reading based off of your sign. I could tell you that you consider yourself a very selfless person, but there are times that you can act rather selfishly. While at first glance this may seem like an accurate prediction, it can be true of just about anybody. To sum all this up, one of the easiest ways to avoid being proven wrong is to never make any specific claim at all. True science relies heavily on predictions that are precise and have the ability to be proven wrong. In true scientific experimentation, what you're taking a measurement of, how you will measure it, and how you can determine results must be clearly defined. Pseudoscientific claims, however, rarely present any type of specific, testable, or falsifiable claims, instead choosing to rely on extremely ambiguous phrasing. 2. Over-reliance on confirmation rather than refutation. Most pseudoscience promoters and practitioners rely heavily on unfalsifiability. This means that they make claims that cannot logically be proven false through observation or physical experimentation. They will argue that anything you cannot prove false must be true, and similarly, anything that you cannot prove true must be false. This is also known as the argument from ignorance. A simple way to observe this fallacy is the following two statements. 1. No ducks are black. 2. All ducks are yellow. The first statement, asserting that no ducks are black, is an example of an unfalsifiable statement. In order to prove this statement false, I would have to observe every duck in existence without having any way of knowing if I had missed any or if new ducks had come into existence since I began. The second statement, asserting that all ducks are yellow, is an example of a falsifiable statement, because I would only have to observe one duck of a different color in order to prove it false. I know this isn't a perfect example, but I feel like it works really well to illustrate the concept of falsifiability. Another example of reliance on confirmation is the pseudoscientific world's over-reliance on testimonials, anecdotal evidence, or personal experiences to bolster the legitimacy of their claims without ever providing any type of documentation or scientific evidence to back these claims. You can see plenty of examples of this in alternative medicine practices such as aromatherapy, like essential oils, or homeopathy, acupuncture, and faith healing. Pseudoscience promoters will often only present evidence that seems to support their claims while suppressing or refusing to consider data that conflicts with their claims. This is commonly known as selection bias, meaning that the method for collecting the evidence or data is distorted to ensure that the facts seem to align with their claims. One thing I mentioned earlier is something I refer to as self-verification. This is more accurately called the woozle effect, or evidence from citation. In future videos, I'll simply refer to this as woo, the common internet slang for the term, and where I derived my name from. The term woozle originated from the 1926 book Winnie the Pooh. In the chapter titled In Which Pooh and Piglet Go Hunting and Nearly Catch a Woozle, Pooh and Piglet begin following tracks in the snow, believing they are hunting an animal called a woozle. As the tracks they encounter continue to multiply, Pooh and Piglet become more and more convinced that they're closer to finding an actual woozle. Christopher Robin then finds them and explains to them that they've simply been following their own tracks in a circle around the tree. Applied to the scientific and pseudoscientific communities, the woozle effect occurs when false facts and untested claims that have previously been published are used to support the current claims being made. In other words, frequent citation of previous publications that lack evidence misleads people into believing there is evidence when in fact there is none. A common tactic used by promoters of pseudoscience under criticism is to reverse the burden of proof. Simply put, true science puts the burden of proof on the person making the claim, not the one criticizing it. Pseudoscience, however, ignores this principle and demands that skeptics prove, beyond a reasonable doubt, that a claim is false. As mentioned earlier, it's nearly impossible to prove a universal negative. So this tactic is also used in tandem with the argument from ignorance, saying that if you can't prove it false, then it must be true. Now, sometimes a specific claim made by a pseudoscience can be falsified. When this happens, they'll often just change the basis for falsification. This tactic is referred to as moving the goalposts. The long fight between intelligent design supporters and supporters of the theory of evolution is a prime example of this. Many of the claims of intelligent design advocates, such as the irreducible complexity of the eye, can and have been falsified. They will then move the goalposts to another irreducibly complex feature until that is falsified, and so on and so forth. The overall idea that a supernatural entity created and designed all life is an unfalsifiable claim. Because we can neither prove nor disprove this claim, it does not belong in the realm of true science. Trying to use scientific evidence to back this claim is in and of itself a pseudoscience. Intelligent design advocates will often try to place this God as the supervisor of the natural world. Whatever science cannot explain, God did it. When science progresses and comes up with an explanation, then God still did whatever can't be explained. This is known as the God of the gaps mentality. The God of the gaps is another unfalsifiable claim because there will always be gaps ready to be filled by God. 3. Absence of progress and stasis of the idea. The renowned astronomer Carl Sagan once said, "In science, it often happens that scientists say, 'You know, that's a really good argument. My position is mistaken.' And then they would actually change their minds, and you never hear that old view from them again. They really do it. It doesn't happen as often as it should because scientists are human and change is painful. But it happens every day. I cannot recall the last time something like that happened in politics or religion." People who promote pseudoscience are generally very passionate about their beliefs. Because these beliefs can never be wrong, there's no part of them that can or should ever change. This can be directly observed in pseudoscientific beliefs that have been around for a long time, such as acupuncture. The beliefs and practices of modern acupuncturists are fractionally different from the basic ideas put forth in 300 BCE. Another great example is astrology. The 12 signs of the zodiac haven't changed, even though the signs no longer align to the dates they're assigned to. Pseudoscience fails to make progress towards securing evidence that its claims are accurate. In true science, stasis of an idea rarely lasts a few years, let alone decades or centuries. This can be observed in fields such as physics and evolution. The ideas put forth by Sir Isaac Newton and Charles Darwin have undergone huge changes and led to hundreds of different fields of study. In true science, mistakes can be made, but the frequency of those mistakes tends to go down in time as we understand more about what it is we are doing. Some pseudosciences, however, generally never change, despite the overwhelming amount of scientific evidence that contradicts their current claims. Be careful not to confuse moving the goalposts or the God of the gaps with true progress or change. 4. Claims of a vast conspiracy. As stated earlier, one of the most important aspects of true science is replication and verification, particularly from third parties not involved in the original experiment. This is where peer review comes in. The purpose of peer review is to lay out all the details on how to properly replicate an experiment and extend research to fellow scientists. This allows for people not involved in the original experiment to replicate it and verify if the results are the same as those published with the original experiment. While it's not a foolproof idea, it is one of the best ways to expand human knowledge because it provides an entire community with access to new concepts and the ability to put those concepts to the test. With that being said, it comes as no surprise that promoters of pseudoscience would want to avoid peer review at all costs. If an idea has not been published in a single scientific journal, it's safe to say that it probably wouldn't pass the peer review process. Most people with even the slightest interest in science have some sort of basic understanding of the peer review system. So promoters of pseudoscience often have to come up with explanations as to why none of their ideas are published in any type of scientific journal. Enter they. They don't want you to know. The idea of vast conspiracies and cover-ups plagues the pseudoscientific and anti-science communities. In alternative medicine, they are the doctors or pharmaceutical companies who supposedly only exist to continue to profit off your prolonged illness and continued use of non-holistic medicines. You can see many subtle examples of this in clickbait advertisements for sham miracle diets and herbal supplements. Diet tricks doctors don't want you to know about, or they don't want you to know about this herbal supplement, are among the most common. In the anti-scientific community, the two biggest players are the Flat Earth Society and the anti-vaccination movement. The Flat Earthers claim that there's a vast conspiracy to hide the true nature of the globe. The reasons for this vary, but the two main reasons are: 1. NASA is faking all their footage and lying about their spending in order to steal more money away from the taxpayers. 2. The round earth is a lie from Satan and his followers in order to move people away from God. The anti-vaccination movement claims that vaccines are actually harmful, leading to a multitude of different issues varying from autism to sudden infant death syndrome. Not only are these claims outrageous, they would take massive amounts of collaboration from doctors, governments, and both professional and amateur scientists around the entire world over many centuries. The amount of money and effort conspiracies of these size would require almost defeats the purpose of the conspiracies to begin with. 5. Misuse and misrepresentation of scientific terms. Similar to the use of vague and exaggerated claims, the misuse and misrepresentation of scientific terms is intended to trick the average person into believing that a pseudoscience is rooted in true science. Promoters of pseudoscience will often throw around scientific words or terms that sound scientific in an attempt to present themselves as a true science. This is often referred to as technobabble or equivocation and is easily achieved by using scientific concepts that are poorly understood by the general public. The New Age movement, for example, loves to use the term energy for just about anything. Energy in New Age is often presented as a physical entity. It is often considered to be a literal, glowing, hovering, shimmering cloud from which one can draw power and feel rejuvenated. The actual definitions of energy are: 1. The strength and vitality required for sustained physical or mental activity. 2. Power derived from the utilization of physical or chemical resources, especially to provide light and heat or to work machines. 3. The property of matter and radiation, which is manifest as a capacity to perform work such as causing motion or the interaction of molecules. Another favorite of pseudoscientific promoters is the use of quantum woo. Waves, particles, strings, and force lines all come together to produce fantastic results. The law of attraction, for example, claims that you can manifest anything you want by focusing on it and collapsing the wave functions of reality. In the real world, a wave function is a term used in quantum physics to describe the quantum state of an isolated quantum system. The wave function is a complex valued probability amplitude, and the probabilities for possible results of measurements made on the system can be derived from it. Simply put, the wave function is just a tool to determine the probability of an outcome. Alongside the misuse of scientific terms, some promoters of pseudoscience may just create whole new terms that seem scientific. A great example of this is the creationist terms Behrman and Behrmanology. These terms have been used to mask the claims that animals only evolve within their own kind. The term Behrman comes from the Hebrew words Bera, meaning created, and min, meaning kind. However, this combination of words doesn't work in the actual Hebrew language. The belief is that, in contrast to the scientific theory of common descent, that not all life on Earth is related, and that God created a specific amount of kinds, such as a dog kind, a cat kind, a monkey kind, etc. The viewpoint claims that kinds cannot interbreed and have no evolutionary relationship to one another. Young Earth creationists use the claims of Behrmanology to support their views that the Genesis creation myth is literal, as well as the fact that all land-based life on Earth managed to be housed in Noah's Ark before the Great Flood. The idea of created kinds, or Behrman, has been so thoroughly disproven that it's what we can refer to as a point refuted 1,000 times, or Pratt for short. Another aspect of pseudoscience that occurs in pop culture is the misrepresentation of scientific terms. The most used example of this is the term life expectancy. In the 18th century, the average life expectancy was 32 years. Today, it is 72 years. Oftentimes, it will be presented that in a day and age when the average life expectancy was 35 years, 50 years was pretty old. While it's understood that life expectancy is an average, it's often presented that ages past that are exceedingly rare, which is absolutely not true. The life expectancy of a population is measured from birth to death. This average includes all babies that are born before their first year of life, as well as all people that die from plagues and from wars. Most of the leaps in life expectancy have actually come from reducing the infant and childhood mortality rates. The average life expectancy for people who reach adulthood has, aside from dips caused by wars and pandemics, only increased by a few years. There are numerous documented records of people living to rather old ages, such as Benjamin Franklin, who died at the age of 84 in 1790, and Ramses II, who died in 1214 BCE and is believed to have lived to the age of 90. Now, as much as I'd love to sit and dig into every aspect of a pseudoscience, I just don't have enough time in this video. So for now, I'm going to leave you with these 5 main points. In future videos, I'm going to focus more on refuting the specific claims and beliefs of pseudoscience promoters, anti-science practitioners, and conspiracy theorists. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, a like and a subscribe would be much appreciated. Now, with all that being said, I want to take a minute to talk about the tragedy that happened in Beirut. If you aren't aware, there was a massive explosion that happened at the docks in Beirut, causing widespread devastation. Many people have been left without homes or the means to provide for themselves or their family. If you have the ability to help, I'm going to be leaving links in the description to charities and organizations that are attempting to provide relief efforts to those who are affected by this tragedy. Until next time, my name is Tyler, and I am the Woo Fighter. Thank you for watching.